Okay, so Brian, thank you so much for joining us. As you all know, this is Mayor Brian Kennedy of Glendale, and he is running for the new Assembly District 10. And he has graciously agreed to join us to talk a bit about it. So first, we'll really quickly go around and introduce ourselves. You know, I'm Cheryl Moranto. I live in Glendale. And I co-chair this organization. Nancy.
I'm Nancy Kaplan. I co-chair with Cheryl, the Politics, Elections, and Campaign Committee, and I also live in Glendale.
Keith.
Hi, Brian. Norma.
I live in Shorewood. I co-chair Grassroots North Shore, and I met you at my door, Mayor.
Kathy.
I'm Kathy Keene, and I live in Shorewood on the Elections Committee.
Paul.
My name is Paul Geenan, and I live in Shorewood, and I'm one of the leaders of the Shorewood Neighborhood Action Team.
Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Descalo. I've lived in Glendale for about 30 years.
Lois.
Lois Malowski, Fox Point.
Michael.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Michael. I live in Mequon.
All right, so Brian, why don't you just start off by telling us why you're running and what you hope to accomplish?
Sure.
Everybody mute, except Brian.
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you all actually for the opportunity this morning. And while you're all introducing yourselves, I was muted because I heard the letter carrier coming up onto my front porch to deliver the mail, and I knew my dog was going to start barking. So anyway, I appreciate you taking the time this morning to meet with me, and I am excited about this opportunity. For years, I've complained about Glendale being divided. Having been the mayor and served on the school board, we've been divided between two legislative districts, not only two assembly districts, but two completely different state Senate districts. And that has been the entire 22 years I've lived here. We've been represented part of the city by Alberta Darling and part of the city by Lena Taylor. And so this time around, I remember talking with Cheryl, we were talking about the fair maps. I said, if you could put as much of the North Shore as possible into one district, it's really a like-minded community. And I know that the governor's maps did put a big chunk of the North Shore into a district. Glendale still had part of it divided off, but it looked like a district that made a lot of sense. So I appreciate the work that many of you did on that particular effort. But when these maps came out and I saw that all of Glendale and all of Shorewood and a portion of Milwaukee became a district, it was interesting to see almost like a sort of like a second North Shore district. And I say that because the part of Milwaukee that's in the district has a lot of similarities with Glendale and with Shorewood. So the Rufus King neighborhood is, largely professionals. The River West neighborhood has a lot of teachers, a lot of union members. So really a lot of similarities across this district between Glendale, Shorewood, and many of the Milwaukee neighborhoods that are part of the district. And the reason I decided to get into the race is I actually worked with a number of our local elected officials to see if we could get somebody to run. And about 4 or 5 days into the period of signature collection, there wasn't a candidate. So I said, well, I'll run. And so we continued looking for other candidates to run while I collected my signatures. But I remember talking with Senator Taylor on May 5th and saying, I'm going to go to Madison and turn in my papers. Is there anybody else running? And she goes, I don't know of any other candidates. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and run for this then. So I went and took my papers to Madison and submitted them. And at that point also then began heavily knocking doors. At this point, I've knocked the entire village of Shorewood There were 4,080 doors. I couldn't get into a lot of locked lobby apartments, but I was able to get into a couple of them where I knew people. So I've knocked, I said, over 4,000 doors in Shorewood. I've knocked the entire River West portion of the neighborhood, and I've done about half of Rufus King. I actually was sitting here working on my walk sheets for the rest of Rufus King as I'm going out this afternoon and tomorrow. So I've been knocking all over the district. And in this particular district, as I've talked and with people at the doors, one of the things that people want is somebody who has the experience of being able to work across the aisle. We have some in our caucus that do a fantastic job of being able to work across the aisle. Evan Goyke is an example. Deb Andraka is an example. They've both worked to get bills passed by partnering with Republicans who are like-minded on some issues and helping to get their legislation through. That's the kind of legislator I'm going to be. It's the kind of mayor I've been in the city of Glendale. And I look forward to representing most of you on this call in the State Assembly.
Awesome, thank you. So questions? Nancy.
So Brian, what priorities would you bring to the legislature in this next session?
Sure. So obviously, I am a strong progressive Democrat. On every Democratic issue, I am a Democratic vote. But I also am a realist. I recognize that Democrats are going to be probably just barely, a little over a third of the votes in the legislature. We know how these gerrymandered maps look. So there are issues where I believe I can work across the aisle and get things accomplished. The first bill I want to submit is actually a reform of the Public Service Commission. When the city of Glendale set out to do its green agenda, we wanted to demolish our city hall, build a new building, put solar all over the campus, the city campus, with the idea being that we would generate enough electricity to power all of our buildings, and we'd get some residual electricity that we would sell back to We Energies and use that revenue to purchase carbon credits to offset our vehicle usage. There's some advances on electric cars for police, but there really aren't a good electric snowplows. And so we were going to have some vehicle usage. Well, the Public Service Commission became the first obstacle because private individuals and businesses can sell their residual electric that they get from solar, but a municipality can't without becoming a public utility and being regulated by the PSC. We're not setting up a power plant and selling electric to Glendale residents. We just simply wanted to produce a little more than needed and use that revenue to be able to purchase carbon credits to offset our vehicle usage. So the first bill I plan to submit, and I have actually talked with a number of Republicans who are currently in the Assembly, as well as several Republican state senators and with Senator Lena Taylor. So I've got bipartisan support in both chambers to submit a bill to reform the Public Service Commission's guidelines for what constitutes a public utility. So if a municipality generates, Shorewood's put it on its buildings, but they've had to walk that fine line as well. They generate enough that they get their We Energies bill down to a few dollars a month, but they can't produce more than they actually would use without running the risk of being a public utility. So that's one of the reforms I want to do. It's not something people are talking about, but you got to elect people to the legislature who will talk about it and make that happen. So our school districts then could put solar in, our municipal governments, county governments could all put in solar. And if they happen to generate in a given month more than they needed, they get to sell it back and they're not a public utility because they're not opening a power plant. So that's one of those practical things that I want to do in the legislature. And I've already started building support to make it happen.
Right?
Interesting. Keith, yeah.
Where do you see yourself in terms, now we've got Deb Andraka on the guns issue, where you see yourself navigating through the state legislature on that?
Well, I mean, I'm with Deb on guns. I think we need significant gun reforms. The position of our state right now, I'll tell you, last night at our Plan Commission meeting in Glendale, I had a gun repair shop that came before us and they wanted to relocate to an area in Glendale where they repair guns. Well, I didn't have a problem with the repairing part of it, but also as part of this particular company, they also serve as a transfer point for online gun sales.
Jeez.
And they're unfortunately they want to locate too close to Glen Hills Middle School. And so we laid it over to our next meeting because I want feedback from the chief of police. I want to talk with the Department of Justice in the next month. And I want to know from our city attorney, how, because they're saying they're not a seller, that somebody buys something online and they send it to them, then the person has to go in, fill out the paperwork, the background check is done. And if they pass the background check, then all they do is hand over something they've already purchased. They tried to say that they were like one of those Amazon lock boxes, where if you don't have it delivered to your house, you just go to the lockbox and pick up your whatever you've ordered online. And I said, that sounds a lot like a retail establishment. And right now, Glendale doesn't allow for any retail sale of guns within 1,500 feet of any school. And so I did tell them, if you wanted to locate in that southern part of Glendale, we don't have anybody living south of Glendale Avenue, between there and Capitol. That whole area is a huge industrial park. If you wanted to locate somewhere in there, you're at least 2,500, 3,000 feet or more from any school in any municipality. I said, that might be something we could consider. I said, but where you want to be on Sydney Place, 2 blocks from Glen Hills Middle School, to me, that's a no-go. So, I'm already seeing this issue come up in my city, and I'm working to fight against it right now. I told him after the meeting, I said, you couldn't have picked a worse time to come before a progressive city like this to locate what on the surface looks like a gun repair shop, but is really for gun transfer. That meeting is public. It's recorded on our website. You can see all the comments and questions I asked them last night. And so, yeah, I'm with Deb on guns, and certainly don't want them. I don't want to see gun sales in this district at all, in Glendale, Shorewood, or Milwaukee.
Yeah, considering we have weak gun laws the way it is in the state, which has led to an increase in crime.
Right. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Paul.
Brian, I just, this isn't a question, it's just a statement. Did we lose Brian? Or is he there?
No, I'm here. I just muted.
Oh, okay.
Any background.
Okay.
I have a
Anyhow,
dog.
No worries. Just want to make sure I wasn't talking to the cloud. Anyhow, our church, First Unitarian downtown, has been working on a criminal justice data transparency bill. David Bowen has drafted a bill, and we've been working with Senator Weingard and Scott Kelly. It looks like they're going to support the bill, not for sure. And also the governor's office has agreed to put the bill, too strong, has agreed to look at the bill when they're going to write their budget. And the way the bill started was $3 million housed in a committee that's appointed by the governor. And the way Senator Weingard wants to do it is 1 million and housed in the Supreme Court. So the whole thing is up in the air, obviously. But after the November election, I'll be if you do win, I'll be talking to you about it. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'd certainly be willing to pick up where Representative Bowen was on the issue. I also think we probably should have a conversation with Representative Boyke. Evan's been able to get legislation passed on significant criminal justice reforms every single cycle. He's had bills signed into law by Governor Walker and by Governor Evers. So he does a really good job of working across the aisle as well.
Thanks.
Sure.
So I guess I can ask a question here. I don't see any other hands. So what other things do you think being a mayor will allow you to bring to the legislature?
Sure. So, actually, it's funny. I had an interview a little while ago for endorsement by an organization that asked me my take on revenue limits. And so there's so many issues that I am aware of because I've been a local elected official, because I've served on a school board for 9 years and have now been a mayor for more than 7 years. There's so many issues that I see where the state is tying our hands and making it incredibly difficult for local government to do its job. And so unless you have those voices in the legislature, unless you have people that are actively trying to run a city or trying to run a school district, at the same time they're serving in the assembly, those issues just don't get brought forward. You can try and build a coalition of allies to champion your issue, but unless they're involved in it, firsthand, they just don't get and understand. There are 5 mayors right now running for the state assembly, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. If you sit at a League of Wisconsin Municipalities meeting with a bunch of mayors talking, we also have the exact same complaints about Madison. Is our residents elected us to do a job? Stop tying our hands, stop telling us what to do. Let us do what we were elected to do. And granted, the residents of Glendale want something different from their city leadership than, say, the residents of Dodgeville want from their city leadership. But yet the 2 mayors talking absolutely have the same frustrations with Madison. And so I want to work on restoring more local control, which is the way our state was initially established. There was supposed to be significant shared revenue back to the municipalities, and municipalities could decide based on the values of their community what they wanted to see happen. And so I want to work toward that local control with the shared revenue coming back to the municipalities again. Shared revenue has fallen from 12% of the state budget to 4.5% of the state budget. Walker lied when he said he was going to give us tools by destroying the unions. He didn't give us anything. He actually took away even more money from us. There was a patch 1 year when a collective bargaining agreement expired, and then in future years, there's nothing. And so I want to work on correcting those kind of issues. And because I'm working at a local level, I see it, I know it, and I can advocate for it.
Right?
Yes, Keith.
To piggytail onto that point, to what effect has what's been the impact of shared revenue on the ability of Glendale to deal with crime in the city?
So Glendale is actually in one of those unique situations. I brought in $175 million in net new construction in the time I've been mayor. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to increase our levy every year with businesses picking up more and more of the share. 49% of our revenue actually comes from non-residential property taxpayers. So we haven't had to experience the kind of cuts because I have so aggressively recruited businesses to develop in Glendale. I've been able to have the revenue I've needed to do the police reforms and the other things I've wanted to do. And we're still sitting on a pretty healthy fund balance. But I know there's a lot of communities out there that are not in the situation that we're in and don't have the ability to bring in those new business construction in their communities. And so we do need to restore the shared revenue because a lot of communities wanting to do the kind of reforms that we've done don't have the funds to do it, and the state isn't helping them. So yeah, I would be fighting for the increase in shared revenue back to the 12 or 14% of the budget that it used to be back in the 90s. We all have our complaints about Tommy Thompson as governor, but Tommy did give money to cities. Cities and villages were well funded in the 90s, and they're not being right now.
And we're talking about municipalities in red districts as well.
Right. We're talking about municipalities all across the state. And that's one of the reasons you got 5 mayors running for the state assembly right now. We're all tired of being told that we're going to get something that we're not getting. And then, they tie our hands when we try to do things at a local level to get the revenue that we need.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be putting the recording up on our website for others to hear your contributions, and we look forward to the primary, and best of luck. We don't endorse in primaries for anybody, but
I knew that.
we really appreciate hearing from you. So thank you.
We do, on the other hand, work hard for whoever the Democratic nominee is.
Absolutely.
So if it's you've got us.
All right. Well, Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. I'll let Darren in. Hello, Darren. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to be here.
As you know, I'm Cheryl Moranto. I'm co-chair of Grassroots North Shore, and Darren is also running for Assembly District 10, our new crazy Assembly District. He has a very, very interesting background in community organizing, and has done other really interesting things in his life that he will share with you. And we'll just really quickly go around and everybody can very quickly introduce themselves. Nancy.
So I'm Nancy Kaplan. I chair the Committee on Politics, Elections, and Campaigns, and I'm a past co-chair of Grassroots North Shore. I live in Glendale.
Keith.
Hi, Darren. Good to see you again. Keith Schmitz, member and founder of Grassroots North Shore and Milwaukee Democratic Action. Good to see you.
Paul.
Darren, my name is Paul Geenan. I live in Shorewood, and I'm one of the co-leaders of the Shorewood Neighborhood Action Team.
Kathy Keen.
Hi, I'm Kathy Keene. You came to our door a couple weeks ago. I live in Shorewood.
Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Discalo and I live in Glendale and been there for about 30 years.
Sorry, I thought my computer died on me. Norma.
I'm Norma Gilson, and we met at the Grassroots North Shore event. I live in Shorewood, and I'm co-chair of Grassroots North Shore with Cheryl. Thanks for being here.
Kath.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Michael. I live in Mequon, and thanks for coming and joining us today.
All right. So again, thanks again for joining us, and just talk to us a bit about why you're running and what you think you can bring to this office.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys all for coming, and it's a pleasure to meet a bunch of you, and it's good to see a bunch of you again. I am Darren Madison. I, have been an organizer for the past, past 15 years of my life. I've been organizing since I was 10 years old, starting with environmental issues. When I used to go to the Ecology Center, then, then Act 10 happened, and I was fighting, alongside my teachers, alongside maybe a lot of you in Madison, trying to fight on behalf of our education system and against restricting our collective bargaining rights. And then organizing as a young person, really fighting for youth voice, especially in a society where we commonly tell young people that that we fight on their behalf. We commonly fight on young people's behalf, but we don't fight alongside young people as it relates to their needs. And then later, went to Howard University where I majored in political science and biology. Then coming back home, I started doing policy advocacy at the local, state, and national level as it relates to environmental justice, the youth justice system, in a population called Opportunity Youth, which are young people between the ages of 16 to 24 that are out of school and out of work. As it relates to, why I ran for office and, ran particularly in the 10th district, the district I've lived in, most of my life, even despite the changes in the district, I've always lived in the 10th Assembly District. I'm running because we need a new form of leadership in Madison, right? We've used the same strategies throughout years to build a base, to inspire folks to come out. And we've won tangible victories, but we've also lost substantially. And we need to change our strategies throughout the state to build a broad-based coalition to change the way that in which we fight for the policies that work on behalf of people. I also believe that there is an importance, especially now with so many folks throughout the nation trying to fight for climate action when we are in dire times and the clock is ticking faster and faster, that we have leaders that understand climate policy, as well as understanding specifically how to move our state in a bold direction as it relates to climate action. We've been doing some amazing things. There actually has been an amazing proposal, legislative package that just got put out by Chris Larson and Supreme Moral Makunde, who have both endorsed my campaign, that hopefully will be passed. But there's a lot more that we can do. I'm hoping to help carry the torch and actually inspire a new generation of young people to take action and to run for office as well. We need young leadership, we need innovation, and we need new strategies. That's why I'm stepping up here in the 10th district, one of the most progressive districts in the state, to move our state forward.
Thank you. So Nancy, you got a question?
You've said new strategies a couple of times, and I'm just wondering if you can flesh that out a little bit. What have been the strategies, and what would you like to see changed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, statewide, the Democratic Party has been doing organizing and efforts to build in districts that have more conservative voters. We've also been trying to increase the base of voters in some of our strongest districts, but we have not been effective in engaging some of the most marginalized populations, mainly because there is a lack of communication between the state party, the ADCC, the county parties, right? We all have different ways in which we do work, and there's some coordination, but not too much. There's also a lot of avenues in which a lot of paths we miss, well, a lot of opportunities we miss in educating folks about policy and engaging folks in actually drafting legislation. I've been I'm also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and I've been doing a lot of work with them, in collaboration with folks who are in the party and some folks who have walked away from the party, to draft legislation, particularly as it relates to some county issues in the youth justice system and some statewide issues related to the youth justice system that we've been able to pass. Nationally, I've worked with coalitions to bring in national experts to do both, to both strategize with community and strategize with legislators to be able to draft legislation and come out with an outside-inside strategy to both activate the public and activate the legislators throughout the state to be able to take action on issues like the youth justice system. We did that work. We've been doing that work as it relates to Act 185, and what we are doing with young people in the youth justice system. And we've had some tangible wins, and we've still had some tangible losses, right? Lincoln Hills is still not closed. They're about to close Lincoln Hills, but they're also proposing to open up a new type 1 facility here in Milwaukee. Well, here in Milwaukee, and replace one of our most successful adult reentry programs in the state. We need to continue to build momentum and educate folks while also pushing in Madison, because if the public isn't fully educated on the policies that we're trying to push, and legislators are just having the fight on the legislative floor, but not also mobilizing folks in their districts, we will consistently lose. So particularly, that's one route. Also just leaning on, it's a responsibility of all legislators to think about legislation in context of the entire state. right? Not exclusively in context of our district. So legislators should be taking time to get to know residents throughout the entire state, build relationships and so on. I've gotten the opportunity through my work as it relates to opportunity youth, as it relates to the youth justice system, as it relates to even indigenous folks up north in Oneida, to be able to build relationships with folks throughout the state and begin to understand that there is a true rural urban divide, and that has been leveraged as an opportunity to divide residents in the state. If we are really talking about winning back the state legislature, consistently winning the governorship, and also, strengthening relationships between all levels of government, we need to do the work to build relationships throughout this state. And that's something that I'm committing to doing. I'm also committed to working with other legislators to do that. I know some have been doing that really well, and some haven't. Hopefully that answers your question, Nancy. I kind of went a little bit all over the place.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about your criminal justice work? You're muted.
Thank you. Darren, this isn't a question, this is a statement. Our church, First Unitarian, which is downtown, we worked with Representative David Bowen to draft a criminal justice data transparency bill. David has committed that the bill is drafted. It was never introduced. And now we're working with Senator Weingard in his office, who is sending messages that they might support the bill. So David's bill called for 3 million in housing this. Actually, what the bill calls for is hiring a data analyst full time that would do that would explore, create, explore data in our both at the local level, at the county, the police, and the state level, the state courts, DOJ, DOC. So David's bill called for 3 million, and Senator Weingard's, they're thinking of 1 million. And instead of housing it with the governor, they're thinking of housing it with the state Supreme Court. The governor's office has agreed to consider this bill in the budget. Kind of the strategy is going to be to get it in the budget so that we can somehow get it through the Joint Finance Committee. So just letting you know that that's out there. Things are real quiet right now because we're in election mode, but after the November election, we'll be picking the ball up again and trying to push this forward. So thank you for listening to our proposal.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing, especially because as you think about the data that is being collected at the so a lot of the work that I've been doing, specifically as it relates to the youth justice system, and it interacts with the adult system too, has been looking at that data, making data requests and so on. The reality is that a lot of the data isn't disaggregated, right? We have general numbers, but we don't have numbers that explain directly where we're sending people, directly where, what programs they're housed in and so on, right? So a lot of the times, at least this happens in the county, and sometimes it has happened in the state, is we've required that young people go to several programs. Sometimes those programs end up providing the same services. So it creates a pathway where we're double dipping, and we're unequitably spending funds, right? So as we're talking about getting people actually what they need, if we actually looked at the data, we could reallocate money to meet other needs, right? And build a realistic continuum of care. The same thing happens in the adult system, where we require folks to do a certain amount of programs, and sometimes those programs either one, only come around a certain amount of time because we've limited the amount of funding that we've provided for these programs, or two, they're the same program and they have to go through it 4 or 5 times. And it results in folks not getting what they need because they've been oversaturated with something that they've already experienced. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it comes down to, I think that piece of legislation moves us in a bold direction as we talk about reimagining our justice system, and really ensuring that folks get the services that they need, and that we're also spending dollars effectively. So thank you for that. And thank you for that context.
Thank you for listening, and well, fingers crossed.
Indeed.
We have time for one more question. Anybody have a question? Okay, so sounds like environment and criminal justice are 2 of your priorities. Any other areas that you would like to focus on as a member of the legislature?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think that, all of this ends up feeding into a bigger continuum, right? We think about the justice system, we think about climate justice. I also want to prioritize education, and with that also pairs with job creation. There is not a strong relationship between the Department of Workforce Development and the Department of Public Instruction. There's a lot that we can do to ensure that those relationships are cemented, and we're actually creating career pathways that work for working class people. I want to build a realistic green career pipeline in the state of Wisconsin. I've done that already through creating public-private partnerships outside of the, in partnership with, county government, in partnership with municipalities, and leveraging state resources, thanks to conversations I've had with legislators that I already know whom have been elected. We've been able to, right here in the district, we've been able to create, jobs for 30 folks in the district to work at 100-acre farm, which is in the Century City site. Initially, it was going to be in the Century City site. It was going to be a meat packing factory, and nobody wanted that in the community. Some legislators were still pushing for it because it created jobs. But if we're not creating jobs that people want, and we're not creating jobs that align with the values of the communities that we're trying to put them in, we're inevitably failing. But through this job, getting 100-acre farms in that space, we were able to also get them to commit to a community benefits agreement in which, a percentage of their proceeds goes towards, a percentage of their proceeds goes to Milwaukee Public Schools to fund their agricultural pathways at Vincent High School. Right? That also feeds into apprenticeship program that we've been working with Teens Grow Greens to create a pre-apprenticeship program that locks them into different opportunities and different tracks related to forestry, related to business and entrepreneurship, related to the food service industry, as well as going into green technology. That is what it looks like to build that pipeline. And it took a lot of work. And through that work, I began to understand that, there aren't too many ways in which the Department of Public Instruction isn't communicating with the Department of Workforce Development. And because of that, it creates more barriers for folks who want to do the work and want to be exposed to these opportunities. So, I'm really hoping to spend some time focusing there and working across party lines to ensure that the systems we have in place work for working class folks across the state. Because as we think about if this is happening in context of creating this pathway for folks here in Milwaukee, I know it's even more of a barrier with folks throughout the state. When I also used to work for the USDA for a period of time, the Forest Service, And I got to see some issues with the logging industry here in Wisconsin. And, there's just a lot that we can do. And I have the experience, I have the background, and I also have a vast network to be able to, lean on those relationships and consistently learn and to create strategies that, again, work for all Wisconsinites. So yeah, our education
Awesome.
system and how that intersects with all of these other systems is important to me, especially when education has been attacked in our state tremendously, and we're facing a huge loss in the quantity of educators, as well as the learning loss of students over the pandemic. And we need to examine all strategies and all pathways to be able to effectively restore our education system, create opportunities for folks to be able to fully participate in our state's economy, and then also ensure that folks are able to live thriving, sustainable lives in this state. And all of the things that I've mentioned up until this point feeds into that continuum.
Yeah. Workforce development is definitely one of those things that should be bipartisan, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, well, thank you so much for joining us, Darren. As you know, Grassroots North Shore does not endorse in primaries, but we wish you the best of luck, and certainly whoever wins, we will work our hearts out to make sure that they get elected in November.
Indeed. And regardless of how this race turns out, I hope folks reach out to me and, think about ways in which we can collaborate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye. All right, I'll bring Alexia in. Greetings, Alexia.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to get to know you better. I will, as we all know, Alexia is running for Secretary of State. Yes, I'm blanking here. We are recording this, so we will be putting it up on our website to share with our members and followers. We'll just really briefly go around and introduce ourselves, and then we'd love to hear more from you about your campaign. So I'm Cheryl Morato. I am co-chair of Grassroots North Shore with Norma Gilson, and also co-chair the Politics, Elections, and Campaigns Committee, which we're meeting in right now. And I live in Glendale. Nancy.
So I am past co-chair of Grassroots North Shore, current co-chair with Cheryl of what we call the PEC Committee. And I also live in Glendale, and it's good to meet you.
Likewise, thank you.
Keith.
Okay, I'm Norma Gilson. I'm the other co-chair of Grassroots North Shore. I live in Shorewood, and welcome to our meeting.
Thank you.
Now, Keith.
Okay, there we go. Found the unmute. Hi, Alexia. Good to see you again after the convention last week. I'm Keith Schmitz, downtown, but I'm still connected with Grassroots North Shore and with Milwaukee Democratic Action, and I'm co-director of the downtown building captain program. Let's see. How about Paul?
Hi, Alexia. My name is Paul Geenan. I live in Shorewood, and I'm the co-leader of the Shorewood Neighborhood Action Team.
Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Keene, and I'm a resident of Shorewood and on the Political Action Committee.
Linda.
Hi, I'm Alexia. I'm Linda Discalo. I live in Glendale and part of North Shore Grassroots.
Nice to meet you.
Lois.
I'm Lois Malowski. I live in Fox Point, and I've been involved for a long time.
Hi, Alexia. I'm Kathleen Michael. I live in Mequon. And thanks for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Elizabeth. Got to unmute.
Elizabeth Colasino. I live in Bayside and a recent member of the Grassroots North Shore.
Nice to meet you. Thank you, everyone.
All
So
right. So tell us about why you're running and what you hope to accomplish.
Yeah.
Just before you start, everybody mute except Alexia. Thank you.
I will also say I have a little bit of a cold. So if you're having trouble hearing me, let me know and I will try to project louder. But my voice is about 3 octaves deeper than it normally is right now. So I'm running for this race because I was very concerned about the fact that there are Republicans that are coming hard for the seat. They want to make the Secretary of State the only person who oversees Wisconsin election results. And I think that's a terrible idea. Quite honestly, I think it's a terrible idea to have partisan oversight of our elections, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican in the seat, because at the point at which we are right now politically, there's so much partisanship that no matter who holds the seat, members of the other party are going to distrust the process and the results, and we are not going to be able to move forward with literally anything else if we can't agree on who's been elected and has the right to make decisions. So I don't think that's the right decision for Wisconsin, but I am the chair of the Democratic Party in Dane County. I've worked on a lot of elections, talked to a lot of voters over the years, and I know that voters also are really wanting something to vote for. They don't just want to vote against the other side. They're more enthusiastic when they have something to vote for. And we win a lot of our elections statewide by a very small margin of votes. So it's really important that we have people in all of the offices on the ticket that are working hard to ensure that we're building a coalition of voters that are excited to vote and enthusiastic about voting, and that helps get them to the polls. The Marquette poll that was released a couple of weeks ago indicated that the most important predictor of likeliness to vote was expressed enthusiasm to vote, and Democrats lagged Republicans by about 20 percentage points on that front. So I really want to transform this office, similarly to what we did with the Treasurer's office 4 years ago, into something that people can be more connected to, more excited about, and to give them something to vote for. So obviously, this office has had a lot of its powers stripped away over the last 40 years. So there's a constraint on what you can do right now based on the current statute and budget. But one of the powers that this office still has is the power to speak up and educate people. And I think we are missing an opportunity with the seat to do that. So I want to use the seat as a bully pulpit to speak up in defense of our democracy, to push back on attempts to infringe on voter rights and undermine election integrity, and to, push back on attempts to attacks against election workers all across Wisconsin. A lot of those people aren't even Democrats, but they're still getting so many obstructionist requests about the 2020 election that they can't do their jobs as other parts of their jobs as clerk. I've heard this from clerks in Waukesha County and clerks in Dunn County. It's a real problem. And we need to be making connections for voters about how the things the Republicans are doing affect their lives in a negative way, right? So if your clerk is unable to do their job because they're still being bombarded with requests to decertify the 2020 election, that has consequences for other parts of your life. And we need to be making those connections for voters so that they understand what's at stake and what's being stripped away. So I also think it's incredibly important to increase civic engagement through education. In my role as Dane Dem's chair, one of the things I've realized is that people don't understand how government works. They don't understand how our electoral process works. And if you don't understand it, it's easy to mistrust it. And this lack of trust is at the core of what's eating away at our democracy. One of the powers that this job does retain is to oversee the Board of Commissioners or to serve on the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, which oversees 77,000 acres of natural areas mostly in northern Wisconsin, manages them for multiple uses, including recreation and timber harvest. And then the money from those activities goes towards funding public schools, and in particular is one of the only sources of funding for public school libraries in many school districts across our state. So I have 4 degrees, including a PhD in forest ecology and management. I studied timber harvest in northern Wisconsin as my dissertation. And I'm also the former PTO president of a high need Madison public school. So I'm going to come in equipped to make smart and sustainable decisions about our natural resources management, but also recognizing the critical need to fund our public school system.
Awesome. Thank you. Questions? Keith.
So what are you gonna do, Alexa, to take the role of Secretary of State beyond being kind of a ceremonial position?
Yeah, well, I think that this is a conversation that we need to be having with the Wisconsin electorate, right? We should be going back. I think that there is an argument to be made for returning some of the duties that have been stripped away to this office. But the conversation that we need to have about that is to look back. People have short memories, and a lot of this stuff happened over the last 40 years. So it's easy to have lost track of it. So what I would really like to do is review all of the duties that have been taken away and have a conversation about what was taken, why it was taken. Those duties didn't disappear. They went somewhere. If they went somewhere, it's costing Wisconsinites something, right? It's either costing them in terms of added salary for the person whose job this wasn't that it became, or it's costing them in terms of services that the person who was doing this job can no longer do because they have added responsibilities. So I think that that is an argument that we need to give this office, I think, more substance. But again, right now, we have a budget and a set of statutes that we have to work within. So I think that is a way we can start that conversation forward. And then it can be up to, Wisconsin citizens what they want to see returned to the office. We start making a case, if we start doing some of the communications, there's not, as far as I can tell, any communications coming out of this office right now, nor has there been for many years in the form of press releases or newsletters. We have to start justifying its existence before we can justify adding on to it.
Elizabeth.
I'm just wondering, how would you get that power back? Is that given to you by the legislature? Is it likely to happen?
No, it's not. This isn't power given by the legislature. It's excuse me. It would have to be an act of the legislature. And I'm not saying, excuse me, I'm not saying that I would walk in and they would just be like, yes, Alexia, you are absolutely right. This is the smart way to go. But I think that here's the thing. The power that we have is to help people understand what's going on and have them push their elected representatives to do what they want. And I will say that when I was out collecting signatures, I encountered Republicans who signed my nomination papers. And the reason that they did that is a couple of things. One, there's a lot of Republicans out there who are looking for a home. They aren't okay with straight up authoritarianism. And so they don't really feel like they're part of the Republican Party anymore. And they're looking for something that they can sort of grow into. And when I talked about this and then partisan oversight of elections, I said everybody wants to feel like their vote is counted fairly. Everybody wants to feel like their elections were conducted according to the law. And, I'm running because I think we need to put things in place that protect this for everyone, not just Democrats, also Republicans. I think there's values-based messaging that we can do around this that, Republicans often respond to fiscal messages, which is why I was talking about, let's talk about what moving these things off to other offices is costing us, because that's a messaging strategy that they respond to. They respond to things like accountability. So if we've moved these responsibilities off to other offices, they're not in the hands of an elected official. They're no longer things that the elected official is accountable for. Nobody's accountable for it. You're not going to track down the person in the Department of Administration who's responsible for these things necessarily. It's hard to do. So I think that's where we start making the case. It's not a process that's going to happen overnight, but we have to start laying a foundation now for anything that we want to happen in 20 years, right? Because Republicans play a long game and we have to be thinking along the same lines.
Yeah, they sure are. They're good at the long game, and we are so not.
They're incredibly good at it. And
Can I do a follow-up?
Sure.
So I just moved here last year, so I'm more familiar with what we did in New Jersey. But in New Jersey, we had I think you have it here too, wisgov.myvote or something like that. Is that run by the Secretary of State's office? It was very helpful. In New Jersey, we had a similar thing where you could check your registration and you could, do all kinds of things there.
that is not run by the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, so who runs that?
That's a great question. And I actually don't know who's the body that oversees it.
It would seem like it would belong in that office.
It looks like Nancy maybe knows.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
You're muted, Nancy.
It's the Wisconsin Elections Commission that runs the myvote.wy.gov. And it's a pretty good site. And it does offer a lot of information, and people can find their registration, find their polling place, find their municipal clerk, request an absentee ballot, and so on. So.
All right. Any other questions?
Norma had a
Nancy?
question.
Norma.
That was actually my question, was how, if at all, are you associated with the Wisconsin Elections Commission and some of the rulings that come out, Dropbox issues, and do you have a bully pulpit about any of those things?
So you're asking about me personally, not the Secretary of State?
No, the Secretary of State's position.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, I think that those are issues that we can use this seat to talk about, right? Because those are things that limit voting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, there are, there's been some studies that indicate that people who identify as conservative are more concerned with fraudulent voting, and people who identify as more progressive are more concerned with people not getting to vote who should be eligible to. But there are also a plurality of people in Wisconsin who do agree on many measures that would make ballot access easier, like making Election Day a holiday. And so we start, I think, not with the issues that are most controversial, but with the issues on which we have the most agreement. And we start using the bully pulpit to push back on why those things aren't happening, because we already have buy-in. We know that there's buy-in from people. And I think as we increase ballot access, or hopefully increase ballot access, that's an opportunity then to start saying, well, look, you agreed with X and Y and Z. How about if we talk about these things, right? We pave the way. We start with the things we share already. And we're not doing that right now.
Good point. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
I think Nancy had a question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. Nancy.
So Alexia, can you just tell us, ignoramuses like me, what the Secretary of State now is able to do aside from communicate?
Yes, well, as I mentioned, it works on the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, right? It is a constitutional, the Attorney General, the Treasurer, and Secretary of State serve on that board. And it is also responsible for producing certain documents required for Wisconsin businesses to complete or to engage in business overseas, and also for families in Wisconsin to complete overseas adoptions. These are called apostilles. This is another opportunity that I think we've missed. I have talked to people like the Milwaukee Recorder of Deeds, who's endorsed me, about the fact that this process has been drastically slowed by budget cuts that happened under Scott Walker. And this, again, this is an opportunity, I think, that we are missing to make some hay over what the Republicans have done, because, you know, I've talked to people whose adoptions weren't able to be completed in the timeline that they expected because they couldn't get the documents in time. And I think that that is probably not the fault of the office. If you've gotten your budget cut back to the bare minimum, you can't, right? You can't process things with one or two staff members the way you can with 20 staff members. But that's an opportunity for us to talk about, here's something that the legislature did. Here's something that this office does. Here's how those two things affected each other. And here's how it hurts Wisconsin businesses or Wisconsin families. And so that's the kind of thing, right? That is a communication thing, but it's communication about the responsibilities of the office and how they affect people. Because, you know, if you don't know what the Secretary of State's office does and you're in this room right now, almost nobody knows what the Secretary of State does, right? So we need to make those connections, help people understand exactly what's going on.
Well, it's also a defensive move, right? Because if the Republicans win, the legislature will give it back powers, right? So
I mean, I think it's possible that they would give it back, even if a Democrat takes it, with the idea that they will either get the seat eventually, or that they will get the seat eventually, and that in the interim, they can try to slander Democrats. And I think one of the ways we need to get, you know, and throw stones at our process and cast doubt on the process that we're doing. And so that's why I think, again, communication builds trust. We need, if that were to happen, we need to be getting out ahead of this and talking about, this is how the electoral process works. This is what's going to happen before any of it happens. We need to be proactive if they were to return it, because if people don't understand it, you're playing a losing game if you're trying to play catch up. And then I think there was one question down there.
Yep, I was just wondering, I agree with what you're saying. I also wanted to know what kind of budget you're working with and how you could get more money to work with or more help.
Yeah, so I don't have the budget numbers off the top of my head. I mean, I know that the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, that trust is 1.1 billion, but for the office, I can't remember off the top of my head what the numbers are. I don't know. I mean, here's the question. I don't know that the incumbent has asked for more budget, right? Tony Evers has been in office for 4 years. I don't know that he hasn't, but I don't know that he has. And I think you can't, I mean, you can potentially go in and ask for more budget, but you have to be making the public case for why that's necessary. That's why something like talking about how the apostille process being slowed down is affecting people. It's going to be very hard to justify the budget if people don't feel that there's a need for the budget. So you have to be, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg, right? You have to ask for the budget, but you have to demonstrate why that budget is necessary. So if if looking at the data, I can, indicate that it went from a, 5-day process to a 3-week process to process these requests, then that, and here's how many times we missed the date that was needed. I mean, that's the way you start building a case for more budget, because nobody's going to give you more budget just because you say, I need it, because I can't get, even if you say I need it because I can't get my job done. People want to know specifically, what does that mean? And I don't think that's been communicated.
It's just become such an important and pivotal position in other states. And I believe they're going to be, that the Republicans will certainly be coming after that, and certainly taking as much power as they possibly can, which is what they do. And so it would appear that you need to be as prepared and well-armed as possible. And so I would hope that, I know that's something that Grassroots North Shore would work with you on, but it's just too big, too important to let it pass without that attention. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, it's been an office that hasn't gotten a lot of attention for a long time. And people often ask me like, well, what is the relevance for my life? And, right now, the relevance for a lot of people's lives isn't necessarily that great because the office doesn't have a lot of power. The problem is that if the office is granted power, it's going to have a huge amount of relevance for everyone's life, because everything you care about depends on who's elected and making those decisions. And so I just really think that it is important at this time that we are developing a plan, an idea for what this office can be, because I don't think it's a message that resonates with to say, well, it doesn't have that much responsibility and we don't want it to have this responsibility, right? The Republicans are saying it doesn't have a lot of responsibility. We want it to have this responsibility. And I think not giving voters something like, well, we don't want it to have that responsibility, but here's an idea for what it could be or should be. I think it's very dangerous if we're not giving them an idea to latch onto. Because people don't turn out and vote for things they're not excited about. They just don't,
Right.
or Democrats don't. Republicans kind of do. And
Yeah.
so it's also recognizing that our base is different. Our base wants to see somebody who's got enthusiasm and ideas and is being active in the role. And they, I mean, there are a lot of people who will vote for the person who has the D after their name. I mean, I certainly do. Right? But we do better on elections up and down the ticket. It doesn't matter what office you're getting excited about, as long as you're getting excited about something.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alexia. It was really good to get to meet you and, to learn. It's kind of been a black hole, right? The office for a while. So you're doing a great service to kind of bring this to light. Grassroots North Shore does not endorse in primaries, but we wish you the best. And certainly whoever wins that primary, we will do everything in our power to make sure they get elected. So
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I know in Dane County, we've developed a network of 22 neighborhood grassroots activist teams. So I fully recognize the power of the grassroots activism in getting people elected. We used that network in 2020 to get Biden-Harris elected. We turned out 42,000 more votes than we did in 2016 for Clinton-Kane. And so, I fully recognize stuff happens. Yes, some stuff happens top down, but a lot of stuff happens bottom up. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. If you have questions for me that you didn't have the opportunity to have answered in this interview, I'd be happy to answer those. And I'm just going to stick my email in the chat. And I'm also going to put my website in the chat. And yeah, I would love to have conversations with all of you if you want them. One thing we didn't address, and I know that we're past our time, so I will stop talking in a minute. But, you know, I know that people have questions about me going up against a big name and whether or not the name carries the state. And I would say there's a couple of things. When we talk about what's worked in the past, I'm a scientist by training, right? When we talk about predicting the future and using the past to predict that, we really need to think about whether or not conditions are the same in between the two time periods that we're comparing. And I would argue that the conditions between now and even in 2018 are vastly different, right? 4 weeks ago, Roe versus Wade was law, and now it's not. And we never had insurrection in the Capitol, and we never had somebody trying to decertify Wisconsin election results. So things have changed, and I don't know that we can count on this, what's worked in the past working now. But I would also say that outstate, people are thrilled that a candidate is coming for Secretary of State is coming out there and talking to them and working on building a coalition with people who are outside of the Madison and Milwaukee area. And my feeling is that we really need someone in the seat who's going to be active all year long and all cycle long to be sure that we are continuously making voters across the state know that their vote matters and know that they're being heard and seen. And that is one of the things that I will do. I've already been to almost 30 counties in just 8 weeks. I'm continuing to go to more counties every week. And that is something that I would plan to do if elected in this position as well. So thank you all so much for taking the time to talk to me. Again, if you have other questions, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.